بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Assalamu alaikum. It is Sunday, the 14th of March, 2021. And this is the 31st broadcast in our series, Call of the Messiah. And the sub-series, Refuting the Qadianis. This is the 10th broadcast in that. I just want to remind people that the founder of our organization was Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Mahmud, Rahmatullah alayh, and he taught us that although other people bring an old prophet and now some people bring a new prophet, the Holy Prophet Muhammad was the last prophet, and after him no prophet will come, old or new. And that he claimed to be the Mujaddid, or the reformer of the 14th century. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had used for him the titles Messiah and Mahdi. He also taught us that all those who recite the kalima are to be regarded as Muslims. The Holy Prophet had said that if one reciter of the kalima calls another reciter of the kalima a kafir, then it is the caller who is the kafir. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad also taught us that there are some people who say that there are some verses missing from the Holy Quran, like Ayah Rajam or Surah Walayat, but nothing from the prophetic revelation that the angel Gabriel brought to the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is missing from the Holy Quran. In the same way, he taught us that although some Muslims believe that parts of the Holy Quran have been abrogated, nothing is abrogated or cancelled from the Holy Quran. And that jihad is a fundamental duty of every Muslim. But its nature depends on the needs of the time and the place. Let us now turn to the topic we are going to look at today. There is much furore and fuss made about the fact that the Qadiani Jamaat has a khilafat. And we are told that this was created by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. So what I want to share with you, the text of a speech that Mian Mahmud Ahmad made, a speech made by the founder of the Qadiani Jamaat. And let us see what he says in that speech. Let me share the original with you. It's published by the Qadiani Jamaat. It doesn't come from us. So let me find, there they are. Okay, now you can see that it says Anwarul Ulum, Volume 9. All of Mian Mahmud's speeches and so on were compiled together into one set and published under this name. And here it says, Jamaat Ahmadiyya ka Jadid Nizam hai, the new, remember the words, the new system of working of Jamaat Ahmadiyya. Well, he says Ahmadiyya, but he means his group, which is the Qadiani group, and how they operate and how they work. Okay, and then we carry on, and here it says, by Sayyidina Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, Khalifatul Masisa. And we carry on, and again, the title is repeated, the new system of working of Jamaat Ahmadiyya, dated, this is 19th of October, 1935. Let me use that increase that. I think it's 1925, not 1935. 1925. I had reduced the text so that you can see. And here it says that I have mentioned this many times. The name of Sadr Anjuman and its modus operandi, its method of working, was suggested by others and not the promised Messiah. But because the promised Messiah gave his approval, thus I decided that all those names which were agreed in the promised Messiah's time, those names shall be kept. Now here he says that name and the modus operandi, the way of working, was suggested by others. Well, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Rahmatullah Alayh, he decided to create an Anjuman. And he asked a prominent member of the Jamaat and a prominent lawyer, Khwaja Kamaluddin, to make a constitution and suggest its rules. Hazrat Khwaja Kamaluddin made the constitution, laid down the modus operandi, the way the Anjuman was going to work, and he gave it to Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib, who then read it and signed it and put it into operation, put it into practical effect. He didn't leave it to be put into practice after he had died. For nearly 2.5 years, the Anjuman operated under those rules, under the supervision of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. So what's this about the name and the rules was suggested by others Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad used to write a book in his hand and then give it to someone else. Or maybe sometimes he even dictated a book and someone else wrote it. For example, Malfuzat. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad would be speaking and someone would be taking notes. And they're printed by the Qadiani Jamaat. Or are they going to say that because for printing, someone else had to organize the text and get it into a form that the book can be printed? This book is not by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad wasn't a calligrapher. It wasn't his job to write books so that they may be printing on printing presses. He gave it to the experts. He did the same thing with the legal matter. He wanted to form an anjuman. And he gave Khwaja Kamaluddin instructions on how to set that anjuman up and make detailed rules and constitution for it, which Khwaja Kamaluddin did. Not only that, for 2.5 years, the anjuman operated under his supervision. And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad never said, well, someone else did this and he's got it wrong and I'm going to change it. To the contrary, when there was a dispute between the anjuman and Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad's grandfather, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad went to a meeting of the anjuman and he listened to both sides. Then he asked for a pen and paper. And on that, he wrote that whatever the anjuman decides by a majority, that should be considered to be the correct and the binding decision. The only thing he said was, if it's a religious matter and the anjuman wants to come to a decision on that, before announcing it, inform me so that I may pray to Allah for guidance. And then he went on to say, after me in every matter, the decision of the anjuman will be final and binding. So what's he talking about? When Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad Sahib here says that this modus operandi wasn't what was decided by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. Someone else had done it. But let's carry on and talk about khilafat. You can see I'm taking you page by page so you can see that I'm not picking and choosing. Here I will again zoom in, increase the size. And here Mian Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad Sahib is giving the reasons for creating this new system, as he says. The old system was the one created by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, which the Lahore Jamaat still operates on. So this is the new system. And here are the reasons for creating this new system. First, that amongst the fundamental principles, the principle which is basically a principle of Islam is the question of the Khalifa of the time. He was not included. So where is this khilafat minhajul nabuwat that these people keep talking about. Mian Sahib is saying that in the basic principles upon which the Anjuman was created, Khalifa Waqt ka wujud shamil na tha. The person of the Khalifa of the time was not included. Then he goes on, a resolution was passed at the time of Khilafat Thaniya, this is time of Maulana Nuruddin, which says that whatever the Khalifa says, the Majlis, meaning the Anjuman, will obey him. But this is not a matter of principle. What it means is that one group of members says that we will do so, but a group that can say this, it can also say, I won't do it. Because the Anjuman that can pass a resolution saying that we will obey the Khalifa, the same one, if after 10 years says that we will not obey him, then according to the bylaws of the Anjuman, she is entitled to say so. Or if the Anjuman says, we'll obey this Khalifa, but we will not obey another Khalifa, that too in accordance with its bylaws, it is entitled to say. And that was how the Anjuman operated at the time of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, as happened in the time of the first Caliph. This question of khilafat, for which we had to give such sacrifices, which are without parallel, which was that the original acceptors of the promised Messiah, those who were called his friends, those who had ancient, close relationship with him, we sacrificed them. If there had not been this religious disagreement with them, they were dearer to us than our own children, dearer to us than our nearest and dearest, because they had seen the promised Messiah. They were his disciples. They had worked with him. If there hadn't been this difference, because of which we had to separate ourselves from them. Listen to the words, जिसकी वजह से हमें उनसे अलग होना पड़ा. They say that Maulana Muhammad Ali split the Jamaat, but here Mian Mahmud Ahmad is saying he split the Jamaat, जिसकी वजह से हमें उनसे अलग होना पड़ा, because of which we separated ourselves from them. Question then arises that if it had been a question of whether we should sacrifice our children or these people, the thought would not have entered my heart that I should not sacrifice my children rather than these people. But in a matter, there was a disagreement. That matter was from Allah. And to accept it is a matter of faith and is necessary for the Jamaat. Thus, those who are dearer to us than our children, we sacrifice them. Thus, for this question, we gave a sacrifice which cannot be matched by any other sacrifice by anyone else. It is greater than sacrificing your life. For when you sacrifice your life, a person sacrifices himself. But here, a part of the movement had to be cut off. Now, if after such great sacrifice, the movement is still unsafe, and it is upon the mercy of a few people who, if they want to, can keep the system of khilafat, and if they don't want to, they don't have to keep it, then this cannot be tolerated. And because the question of khilafat was not a part of the basic principles of the Jamaat, this is the principle that bylaws set up by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. The organization faces such dangers that it will turn those who've taken my bath into those who rejected my bath. And the stroke of a pen by 10 or 11 people, Qadian suddenly becomes Lahore. Thus, such an Anjuman cannot be entrusted with these tasks, even if they have taken a bet, even if they've taken an oath to me, even if it is the most sincere membership. That was why it was needed to create a point on which the whole Jamaat agrees. It is because of this situation that after consultation, which took place at my time in Masjid al-Mubarak, I suggested a way. So, and then he goes on to say other things, that some things are kept under the direct supervision of the Khalifa. So that means that this Khilafat, this system, it says, at my time, the consultation that took place in Masjid Mubarak. So this was not something that Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad had done. This is, you see, Qadianis regard Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad as the Prophet. And yet the system he created, they saw nothing wrong in tampering with that. Second reason was that the bylaws of the Majlis were such. And then he gives reasons, and he says that we need to change that. So that's another reason for the change to the laws set up by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam. Third reason is, he says, which was felt from the very beginning. Well, not from the very beginning, maybe beginning of when Mian Mahmud became the leader. And that was that according to its bylaws, the Majlis Mu'tamiddin, the Council of Elders, had no connection with the Khalifa. To ask the Khalifa for advice is one thing, but to have a direct connection with him is another. And the way decisions were taken was this, that it decided everything and then put it to me. What is your opinion? And according to its bylaws, which I remind you again, were approved by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, which according to its bylaws, it could do. For there was no rule, there was no law which said that before deciding anything, it was bound to consult the Khalifa. Or afterwards, whatever advice, whatever opinion the Khalifa gives, it has to accept it and follow it. And this is incumbent. But it was foolish that you decide something and then you consult afterwards. And the reason was that its construction, there was no khilafat, no relationship with khilafat. So for the future, to avoid such problems, this effort has been made. So here, Mian Mahmud Ahmad Sahib, the founder of the Qadiani Jamaat, says, as he says, that in construction of the Anjuman, there was no connection with any khilaf. So he is admitting, he is calling this Jamaat-e-Ahmadiyya ka Jadeed Nizam, the new operative structure of the Jamaat-e-Ahmadiyya. And yet the Qadiani Jamaat still keeps telling us that this system was created by the promised Messiah. It wasn't created by the promised Messiah. He never mentioned a khilafat anywhere. If he had, why did Mian Mahmud Ahmad Sahib in this speech say that there is no khilafat and we have to create one? Why does he say that Anjuman is entitled and authorized to make all decisions? So the Qadiani Jamaat needs to think about this, because this Anjuman operated along these lines. Number one, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib asked Khwaja Kamaluddin to set up the constitution and make bylaws for the Anjuman. Number two, Khwaja Sahib drafted the bylaws and gave them to Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad for his comment and approval. Hazrat Sahib approved those bylaws. Number three, the Anjuman was set up and operated during the lifetime of the promised Messiah for nearly 2.5 or 3 years. Number three, when there was a dispute, Hazrat Sahib came and said, whatever the Anjuman decides by a majority should be considered to be the final and correct and binding decision and acted upon. Number 4, he specifically said, only in religious matters, no other matter, only in religious matters, the Anjuman should inform me of what they've decided, so that I may pray to Allah for guidance. So that I may pray to Allah for guidance. But after me, and these are Hazrat Sahib's words, after me, in every matter, the Anjuman's decision arrived at by a majority will be sufficient. Where in all this is there a mention of any khilafat? Tell us, please tell us. Show us from the books of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. You believe him to be a prophet. Show us from his books where he says, after me, there will be a khilafat. He does not. As I said, if you're going to say that these rules were drafted by someone else, as I said, Hazrat Sahib's books were calligraphed by someone else. So are you going to now make changes to his books and say, oh, well, someone else calligraphed them? Hazrat Sahib didn't actually physically write them himself. Is that going to be your stand? So I say to my brothers, you see, I've got this message from someone. Listen to the message. I want to know, why don't you guys accept khilafat? Well, please listen to this lecture. Please read Jamaat Ahmadiyya ka Nizam Jadid Nizam Amal. You haven't listened to anyone, you haven't read anything, and just put this message up. This is an example of the arrogance of the Qadiani Jamaat, which has got them into trouble over and over again. Anyway, our time has now run out. So I take my leave of you with the prayer that whoever you are, wherever you may be, may Allah keep all of you safe and sound and free from harm. Assalamu alaikum. Khuda Hafiz. Goodbye.